Hello everyone. Today is Tuesday, July 19. We all know that problems in America piled up, so pick your favorite. But there's one problem no one can ignore. My motto of sorts is, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? I'm making this video to see what I say, and I'm sharing it with you. I call it Shadow in the Land. I started talking to myself about this back in May, so let me begin with the Queen of Canada. Per an article in Vice News and also in Yahoo News, the Queen of Canada is a Filipino woman who has declared herself Queen of Canada. Among other things, she decreed that Canadians no longer have to pay their bills, particularly utility bills. I doubt she has much in the way of utility bills herself. She travels the country in an RV. This would all be very humorous, except that she has accumulated followers who have taken her at her word and stopped paying their bills. Normally, I would have just read this, laughed a little, and moved on. But things are not normal now. I quote from Vice News, "The short, soft-spoken Filipino immigrant has since rocketed to popularity over the last 2 years, thanks to QAnon personalities giving her far-fetched claims of essentially running Canada from the shadows a giant boost. Since being confirmed by other QAnon influencers, her reach has grown to include over 70,000 followers on Telegram, many of whom follow her in real life." End of quote. I guess they just drive along in their RVs with her. Now, QAnon originated in the US and has become a bizarre, widespread phenomenon. Pizzagate was arguably the starting point for QAnon. It is mostly a Republican Party thing that started with the emails stolen from the Democratic Party around the time of the 2016 election. Right-wing activists spread conspiracy nonsense via social media that several high-ranking officials and U.S. restaurants were connected in a human trafficking and child sex ring. One of the establishments allegedly involved was the Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria in Washington, D.C. Comet Pizza is a family restaurant in my neighborhood. I go there. I walk there from my house to take these pictures. As a consequence, the pizzeria owner and staff received death threats. And in December 2016, a man drove up from North Carolina with his AR-15 to save the children. He ended up firing his rifle 3 times in the restaurant. Luckily, no one was hurt. The man is paying the consequences in prison. You have to wonder, though, what kind of fantasy world does he live in? QAnon serves as one obvious symptom of whatever ails us. According to the BBC, QAnon is wide-ranging. Social media and opinion polls indicate there are at least hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who believe in at least some of the bizarre theories offered up by QAnon. End of quote. Personally, I think theories is the wrong word. These are just bizarre fantasies. Hundreds of thousands or millions of believers? Are these believers examples of individual credulity and gullibility? Or is it some kind of mass hysteria? Or both? Far more people than I ever expected apparently lack a capability for critical thinking sufficient to question things most of us would consider crazy, unreasonable, or at least highly suspicious. Others in this realm are more than happy to exploit the credulity and manipulate the gullible. What is the problem? Part of the problem is the spread of false information, and part is the credulity of people who are predisposed to believe it. But this is accompanied by a related, deeper, more sinister problem. The deeper problem, violence and meanness, took form in the violent attack on Congress and the U.S. Capitol on July 6, 2021. There are other examples. Incidents of road rage, and especially mass shootings, are all too common. The Top supermarket in Buffalo, May 14. Uvalde, Texas school shooting, May 24. Just recently made the headlines. After that, on June 2nd, CNN reported that 2 doctors and 2 other people were murdered in a Tulsa hospital by a former patient. USA Today June 5 headline read, Beyond devastating, 6 dead, 25 wounded in Philadelphia Chattanooga club shootings. A June 10 article in the Wall Street Journal bears the headline, "Rural America Reels from Violent Crime. People Lost Their Ever-Loving Minds." It takes a mass shooting to make the national headlines. Other more local accounts include the murder of a Wisconsin judge. A boy on vacation in a car with his father was killed by a shooter, randomly shooting at cars in South Carolina. And then we had the July 4 mass shooting at a parade at the Chicago area town of Highland Park. Early in June 2nd to be precise, I came upon an article describing an online attacks on Star Wars actress. I think that comes into focus. None of this expresses reason. What is the point? Are these people venting their status dissonance? Can't they suspend their time on something positive and productive? This is just the worst kind of human behavior. People indeed have lost their ever-loving minds, and darkness is descending upon the soul of America. We are undergoing a colossal psychic disturbance across the country. I had to look for some help, some insight on this. I turned to C.G. Jung, the famous psychoanalyst. He was a prolific writer, so I referred to The Essential Jung, a selection of Jung's writings assembled by Anthony Storr, just for reference here. I focus primarily upon the undiscovered self. This is an essay written by Jung in 1957, toward the end of his career. He provides a commentary on the plight of the individual in modern society. He wrote this in the context of the ideological rivalry between the democratic West and the totalitarianism of Soviet Russia and China. Jung examined the loss of individual freedom under totalitarian regimes and warned that the West is susceptible to the same fate. In my younger days, I was convinced that people could reason through difficulties, personal and public, to reach some kind of truth, at least a consensus that people could agree on, and that this could be the basis for making decisions and solving problems. Now in my waning years, I'm not so sure. Carl Jung had this to say about reason. The gift of reason and critical reflection is not one of man's outstanding peculiarities. So on that note, I will end this little session. Stay tuned.